So it is Thursday night, and this is Loot Shooter Weekly. We're running a little late tonight, having a few technical difficulties, but glad to be here.
We figured them out. We figured
it out. I am gamertag Burt Reynolds, and with me, as always, is the golden voice of gaming, Negan Killjoy.
Hello, Burt. How are you doing this fine evening? After all our troubleshooting, our technical issues aside, how's Burt doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Negan. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. It's Thursday, so that's always fun doing this, and it means the weekend's rapidly approaching. So
yes, it does.
Always good times.
Yes, it does.
It's been a good week at work, so it's been manageable at work. So tomorrow should be relatively manageable as well. And knocking on wood, and go from there. So gonna ride into the weekend.
Crazy busy day tomorrow.
That's not good. Not supposed to have crazy busy Fridays. You're supposed to do the easy Fridays. Did you even figure that out yet?
I figured that out. My work has not. There's a difference. Yeah.
But Bert, you're the boss man.
I know. Well, I'm one. The rest of the bosses have not figured that out.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm not alone in that role, right? So yeah, I have a crazy Friday, but that is all the more reason to enjoy tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're gonna do that. We're actually in a game called Outriders. We talked about it a little bit last week, and we're back in that game tonight. Well, I don't think we weren't in it last week. We were just talking about it. We're in that game tonight, and so we're going to play a little bit of this. We've been really enjoying it. It's had a really rocky start, of which I could, we could detail for all of you. It got a patch today to help prevent the inventory wipe issue. You and I played it safe last week, and we've not done any expeditions in this. We're both at level 30. I have a couple level 30 characters. You have a level 30 character. We're working on some third characters or seconds or whatever. But we stayed out of expeditions, which seemed to be where the bulk of the wipes were happening. So we've been just doing world stuff. So tonight we're going to finish off a hunt. There's 10 hunts. There's 10 assassination contracts, and there's 10 gathering history things. Each of those things can be reset and gives you, when you do all 10, you get a legendary. We finished them last night. One of them glitched out for you, and you didn't get credit, so we were going to do that one tonight. So I did the other 9 real quick after work today, and then you did the one you were missing anyway. So now we're back to a mismatch where only I have one.
Yes, exactly. my patience just didn't exist today. I really wanted to get it done. I wanted to get through it.
Somebody was a little impatient and decided to go and do that.
That's right. My bad.
We're also gonna look at a build that I put together with Devastator, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Before we get there, it's time for the beer segment, because we've just struggle bust through 20 minutes of technical difficulties. So, What are you drinking tonight, Negan?
Tonight, I am drinking a Kolsch-style ale called Cluck the Rona, which is from Henhouse Brewing Company, hence the Cluck portion of the Rona name. And it is a Kolsch style, and they have a big description on it. It's one of the first ones they've done, but they're really excited about it. And they're all just really supposed to be really fresh Kolsch style. So I'm looking forward to this tonight. I'm not going to read the whole big old description because it's like a book. So we're not going to read that tonight. But I'm definitely going.
You love your Kolsch's.
I do. So I'm really looking for, and I love Henhouse. Henhouse does a lot of good ones. They've done a couple. I think they do a hazy IPA that I actually enjoy too. So their Kolsch style I'm excited to try, as always. They're out of Sonoma, California.
Nice.
Local to me, or a little about an hour or so north of me or so. But yeah, they're a good little craft brewer local here. And what are you doing tonight, my friend?
So I am doing, it's from Beguile Brewing in Chicago. It is their blonde, Beguile Blonde.
Ooh,
and it's brewed with, it's an American blonde ale brewed with honey, brewed with locally sourced Midwestern honey. Our blonde ale is clean and balanced with subtle fruit notes on the fermentation profile. Dry finish, pure drinkable goodness that makes our most popular beer. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Seems like a lot of the blonde ales are going with honey in them recently. Is that just a blonde thing, or is that?
I always think of honey as going with wheat ales. But I guess, maybe it is. It looked good. The can was very pretty. It's got like a nice kind of, me, I'm kind of a design guy, and so
Mm-hmm.
it had some cool graphics, and I'm gonna drink it out of the can, Negan. Sorry.
Oh, all
Um,
right. I won't judge harshly tonight. We've had 20 minutes of technical troubleshooting. Enjoy your beer the way you want to.
Thanks. Ah, that's good. Refreshing. So,
So let's talk
um,
about Outriders. Let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So just real fast before we get into anything and before we get into the hunt and stuff like that, we did touch a few things last week. What are you enjoying about the game? First off, what's the good from your perspective?
I love this game. I'm gonna say it right now. I'm really enjoying it. I loved the story. Shockingly, now I had very low expectations of it, but I actually really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the voice acting. I love the fact that every interaction in this game, whether you walk up to a vendor, side missions, you talk to anybody, it's all scripted cutscenes, which some people got really annoyed by. It reminds me of old school RPGs from like
Mm-hmm.
my youth. Um, that's been one of my favorite parts. I like the combat in this, and then the builds. As somebody who likes putting together builds, this game is rich in ability to put together builds. How about you,
Yes.
Negan? What are you liking?
I have to agree with you. I think the storyline is what kind of intrigued me the most on while we played through it. The voice acting, the lines, the way they didn't take themselves too terribly seriously, and it was still humorous. It was well voice acted. I was trying to think of a game that isn't, and I went to Breakpoint, where it seemed everything in Breakpoint, the voice acting was very stilted, very
Mm.
controlled, and there was no humor, there was no variation and stuff like that. Whereas here, there was variations and stuff like that. So the voice acting I enjoyed. The combat's a little rough. I think it can be smoothed out a little bit. I think that'll probably improve as the game ages a little bit, in my opinion. But it's still fun. And clearly, I enjoyed the game because I couldn't wait to play it again today to finish off the hunt. So I am enjoying the game. There's something about the game that does make you want to scratch that itch. So they can do a good job with it. And I'm looking forward to the expeditions and doing the end game stuff as well. So that's
As
the
am
good
I.
stuff for me.
And you know what? With regards to the combat, I will say it's not the gunplay is not buttery like Destiny, right?
Hmm.
And it's not methodical like the Division. And it's not bombastic and over the top like Borderlands, right? And so it's like, well, where does it then why do I like it? You're right, it does have some rough edges. It's not the smoothest combat, but it reminds me so much of Diablo 3 in that it requires rhythm. You get in a rhythm with your skills and your guns and your skills and your guns. And
Hmm.
that I think is what's addictive to me. Like you actually feel like you're getting better at it. It's not just about aiming, it's about getting the rhythm right. Almost like playing an instrument.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
And I
So,
like the
uh
other part about it is there's a lot of variability in the combat in this. We've talked about it before. Like the enemy types don't change, but the way they attack you changes. Sometimes you run like each kind of faction's a little different. Like you get grenade spammed, but then when you run into captains, they use totally different skills every time you run into them. So you can't attack the captains the same every time. Does that make sense? Which I find like you can play the same encounter 10 times and it's never the same encounter.
it feels different each time. That's true. That's true. It does feel different each time.
And
I
that's
would agree with that.
addictive. That
Hmm.
that becomes kind of addictive in and of itself. So that's what I'm enjoying about the combat. But I agree. I mean, it can be a little like visually jarring and I don't know. Yeah, it's not perfect. Let's put it that way.
Right. Right. So, what about we're going to lump the last two together so we can get to stuff real fast. What about the bad and the ugly? I think I know what you're going to say, but go ahead and tell me what from perspective. Got a bad perspective on this. What do you think the game's struggling with?
Well, from a bad perspective, I think the decision to go P2P networking is stupid in this day and age.
Hmm.
And we're suffering for it, right? Laggy experiences when we're playing together because we're thousands of miles apart. You're on the West Coast, I'm in the Midwest. Like it, you have to have the person who has the best internet connection host, and if you don't, everybody suffers. Like we
Right.
tried to play with
Exactly.
Horchata the other night on his janky outside of Seattle network that's awful. And you and I were both getting disconnected. Stuff's moving around the screen all over the place. It's like it's bad. That P2P thing, man, I don't know who as much as this game is a throwback to old school RPGs and stuff, don't make your networking a throwback to the 90s and early 2000s. It's like yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I completely agree. It's the networking and stuff like that is the struggle. And as on par with that is actually getting connected and actually joining with friends and stuff like that is a burden as well. But that's the bad. I think that's the bad and the ugly together. So the ugly
Well,
is all the inventory wipes. But
I was going to say the ugly is the inventory wipes, fear of playing the game that your inventory was going to get wiped. And I would argue, the ugly is also the last weekend's servers, launch weekend. The servers
mhm.
were unbelievable, like stinking believably bad,
Yeah,
crashing all over the place.
and according to the patch note today, the inventory wipe can still happen. They say it won't. It's not permanent though. So as soon as you see it happen, if you get out of the game and come back in like 5 minutes, it restores itself. So it's not permanent like it has been. But they're
Right.
still working that out. But that's so yeah. Hopefully they'll figure that out and get rid of that, so you're not playing the Russian roulette version of gaming. Outriders all the time.
Awful.
All
Awful,
right.
awful, awful. So
Good.
we're gonna do this last hunt, and we'll head over there, and then I'll talk a little bit about the build I'm gonna run because I have been working on a build. I am gonna on the way over there just give credit. So I had been playing around with the Devastator. I brought a Devastator up first, and boy was I disappointed because here's another bad about this game. So they have a tank class, the Devastator, and yet they don't have any aggro mechanics. Now they're not the first game that's made that mistake in this genre. There's a tank
Mm-hmm.
class in the Division that has no aggro mechanics, and you're like, what the heck? um, why would you have a tank if you don't have any ability to pull aggro? So same thing here. Leveled up the Devastator and found it to be very underwhelming at level 30 and starting into the end game.
Yeah. In fact, you
And
recommended our friend Horchata not even run it at that point because it was so
no,
disappointing to you.
and I did because yeah, what I was running was a top tree, right? So all the
Mm-hmm.
wisdom was the Devastator has all the survivability that he could ever need, but he doesn't have weapon damage, so you run top tree, which is all weapon damage, right? The Vanquisher. And then you'll make up for the fact that you don't have any weapon damage. But it's still not enough. And the only real effective way to do it is with shotguns, which have terrible ammo reserves. I mean,
Oh,
awful.
horrible, horrible.
And that's like the only semi-effective way to do it. And even then, as you get up in the world tiers pretty far, it gets pretty rough. So I started looking at all the other nodes, and the middle node is obviously just additional survivability. And I'm like, well, that ain't my problem. I'm not dying a lot. I'm just can't kill crap.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't need a bunch more survivability. So then I was looking at the bottom tree, and there's a lot of different interesting things here, right? Which is, um, you have a melee skill, and this was the part that got me thinking. Each one of the melee plays a big role in this game versus other loot shooters. You can put a melee build together in Borderlands, but even then you're usually shooting your melee using a face puncher gun. It's not really melee. You're not running around punching stuff. But melee is a skill in this game, and it deals damage and it inflicts a status. And there's two types of melee. You can run up and punch something, or you can run up and slam. And in the particular case of Devastator, it affects bleed, and it also, by default, like at this level, I'm at World Tier 10, 30. I deal 25,000 damage without any buffs to melee, right? Which is
Dang,
crazy. And I'm like,
that's crazy.
That's a lot of damage, right? And so I started running down, looking at the tree, and there's stuff to buff that up further and buff bleed up further. And so then I was like, oh, I wonder if anybody's doing any melee builds. You know, has anybody even done anything? So I went on YouTube, and I came across a streamer. I don't think I mean, he has quite a few followers, but not like a particularly well-known loot shooter streamer. And his name's Swing Point. And he was messing around with a melee build with not even optimized gear, like not even remotely optimized, but a couple key talents. And I watched his video and I was like, man, I'm gonna work off of that and try to come up with something that I like, kind of based off of his video. By the way, I've given that guy a follow, and he seems like a really cool streamer. He does a great job explaining things. So Swing Point. And so
How it sounds?
The point is Poynt, I think. Swing Point. So yeah, cool guy, cool build video. Doesn't really look like he does the loot shooter thing. I think this might be kind of a unique thing that he was playing Outriders. Looks like he's more of a Resident Evil streamer. He was onto something. He was onto something for sure. And so that was the skill tree. I'll show you what I'm doing for guns here. So in this particular case, I'm never going to fire my gun really. So basically, this is if you're familiar with RPGs, this is what we call stat sticks. So this is a stat stick. You can see here on the gun, my first gun, I have armor pierce, close range damage, and status power. When I'm holding this gun, those buffs apply to any kind of damage I do. So total stat stick, that's all that gun is. I have this as well. This has weapon life leech in case I start getting low. I can fire this, and this one you can see is just based on CC. Freezing bullets and bleeding bullets. And I'm just trying, if I need to CC something, slow it down, I can use that. Same thing here. This is just for CC, the full auto pistols. From a gear perspective, everything I have, you want to have it rolled into anomaly power, status power, and cooldown reduction. Now, I don't always have my passives that good. I'm still farming some additional gear, but you'll see anomaly power, close range damage, status power, anomaly power, healing received, cooldown reduction, anomaly power, close range damage, cooldown reduction, anomaly power, cool reduction, close range damage. So those are, close range damage is an okay second for that, but you really want ideally anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and status power. And the reason being is I want my statuses, or I want my skills up all the time, so I want them cooling down. Anomaly power is what gives all of your skills, including your melee strength. And the status power is the effectiveness of the bleed that I'm going to apply. And there's a couple non-negotiable. This build is kind of gear dependent, so there are a couple non-negotiables. You want to have untamed power. When using a skill, it deals 8,412 damage to enemies within a 5-meter radius around you. Well, I'm always punching, and that's a skill. And every time I punch, I deal an additional 8,412 damage in like a ring radius around. Exposing strike. Killing an enemy with melee inflicts vulnerable on enemies for 10 meters around you. That's awesome. In a big ring around me, everything gets hit with vulnerable. Martial arts is going to reduce my melee cooldown by 50%, allowing me to punch much quicker. And brawl gives my melee 100% bonus melee damage. So I'm going to be punching. I'm going to be using the earthquake. So I need to have earthquake inflicting bleed, and I need to have earthquake having an extra cooldown. And I'm going to use Golem. and so I want to increase the duration of that by a little bit. Here I've buffed up the earthquake skill, and finally,
what does Gollum do?
Gollum gives you armor. It's like stone armor.
Okay.
So it's just a little extra, since you're up real close, little extra survivability. And then this actually adds bleed to the Golem effect. So again, another ring of radial damage with bleed. Now in that skill tree, my bleed is actually giving me my heal. And my bleed is applying damage, and there's a buff to the bleed damage. So sometimes I'll pop my Golem and like ads will just fall down dead. It's kind of cool.
Nice. Yeah. Definitely
Right?
what you want when you're doing
I don't
ads.
even punch them. Like I can literally just run past them and they die because the bleed is killing them from this skill. Was that your cat, Negan, or did
That
you
was my
fall
cat.
over?
That was a cat.
I was just making sure you didn't have a heart attack and like fall over. And
Oh my gosh, you're punching everything. Oh my word, it's the big one. It's the big one.
that would be awkward if you died
It would
on
be a little
stream.
awkward. It would be a little bit awkward. No, I'm good.
So-
It was a cat.
So that's the build, right? And you're going to see it in use here. Now, the thing is, so I did all these hunts on a lower level today. The trick with the hunts is a little pro tip for you. You can do the hunts on a low world tier. You have to do the last hunt on the highest world tier. And then when you go turn in the stuff, your legendary that you get will be equal to your highest world tier. So we're going to do this last hunt before I go turn it in. And it's split tooth, and you'll get to see how this build works. I'm basically just going to be punching all the time. I mean, literally punching, jumping, punching. My skills are on quick cooldown, so it's like I'm going to be throwing out the earthquake a lot. And a little, like a little kind of, again, pro tip with the earthquake. If you're pushing a direction, like if you're standing still and you hit earthquake, there's a little internal cooldown between earthquakes that you can do. But if you're pushing a direction, you can do them quick. So you can see there, I literally just spawned 2 of them real quick. Now, the other thing I will say is this build is, aside from being a little gear dependent, it's also a little equipment dependent. It's way better if you have a Xbox Elite controller or a Razer, something where you can map your buttons to something else. Because if you're going to be punching all the time, you don't want to have to hit the right stick all the time to do it. So, little gear dependent, little device dependent. And you can see here how I am absolutely just punching and smashing everything.
Yep, I'm trying to stay out of your way while you do it. Kill some things occasionally as they come towards me because they're not leaving me alone. So I can't let you cav all the time.
Because there's no aggro in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Unfortunately. Alright. This is split tooth. Now, I am going to call out one downfall to this build.
Mm-hmm. What's that?
Airborne things.
Oh, yes.
Airborne things are a bit of a problem because everything is ground focus. So there's that. Just gonna say it. It's not great when you're trying to kill things in the air.
That does tend to step in a way a little bit. And let's say so we talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly. The beautiful part of this game, and we love it so much, is the fracking auto loot.
Auto loot is the best thing to ever happen in a loot shooter video game.
Exactly. I can't believe it took somebody this long to come up with a little button that does that for us.
It is so good. this build though, you can see it's very strong and it's very fun. And I'm not using a drop of legendary gear on it at all. No legendaries here whatsoever. It's all purple gear. It's not perfect. It's close. I mean, I don't want to give the impression I farmed a long time to get the gear I'm wearing, and I've been leveling it up for a little bit now. So it is a bit gear dependent, and you got to have those mods, and you want to have ideally. I mean, the only piece in here I don't really like right now is I don't know that I really would run Bleeding Impulse. I would probably run. I think it's Golem of Death, which is the one that extends Golem's duration by 2 seconds for everything you kill. That would make me even tankier
Yeah.
and still deal the damage. But I have not had any luck getting that piece to drop despite a lot of farming. So, it takes a little bit of work. But I will tell you that as long as you've really got the three mods, like as long as you've got brawl, martial arts, and untamed power, you're gonna do work. You're gonna do work. It's just how it is. Like you're gonna put out damage. So even if you're not totally optimized, you can, get started with it. We haven't been into expeditions yet. Haven't done CT, 15. But from everything I see with this build in terms of how much damage output it's putting out and how much survivability it has, and I do have a totally meta Technomancer build, like, anomaly rounds build with really great gear. This puts out similar damage and similar survivability to that. So I don't see how this would not be viable all the way up through endgame. And adding some legendary pieces into this would only make it better. And there are some legendary mods that would make it better. So there's that. I believe that this has the potential to be exceptionally strong, even all the way up to endgame and all the way up through the CT levels.
Nice. Well, good. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And it made you love Devastator again, which was good.
It is great. It is great because I leveled up that Technomancer because I was like, I'm never playing that class again.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I remember you talking about that.
Till they buff it. I was like, they got to buff that class. I can't play Devastator. It's not fun. But no, I'm loving it, man. I'm loving it. It's made me love this build. Now, I will say this, though. If you like gunplay, I haven't fired a shot in days.
I can attest to that. You have not fired a shot in days. Every time we're running around, you're just punching stuff. That's the name of the stream, Punchy McPunchFace.
Right. So if you're looking to, do some gunplay in this game, this is not the build for you. But if you're looking to be the guy who's alive all the time and can revive all the teammates while dealing out like nuclear levels of single point damage, this is the build for you.
Mm-hmm.
You will enjoy it because it does insane amounts of single point damage and even does some decent ad clearing. And I am usually the one alive who can pick everybody up when they're down. So
that's right.
I guess there's that. And I didn't mention what skills I was running. Again, I'm running Gravity Leap. I'm only running that as purely a repositioning thing. Like if I need to suddenly get out or I want to get into the fight quicker, that's all I'm using it for. I'm not dealing any massive damage. Although, I mean, because I've got all that anomaly power, I am dealing 22,434 damage with it.
Right.
The Golem, again, Golem's just so strong. Fortify yourself, 65% of incoming damage reduction for 16 seconds. And then I have a mod on that extends that to by 100% to 32 seconds. And then the Earthquake, which is 23,000 damage, and it doesn't interrupt. And I've got that mod on there that allows me to do it twice, and the one that allows to add a bleed, and the one that buffs the damage by 7,000 damage to almost 30,000 damage. So that's my primary skill, except for the fact that punching is a skill, and that is actually my primary skill, punching. Punching is my primary skill. So Any
Which is
other
important to
questions
note.
about the build?
I know you mentioned it before, but punching is considered skill, so anything that impacts skills impacts melee.
Anything that impacts skills impacts melee, and anything that triggers off of skill usage
Triggers off of melee.
triggers up, that's like this Untamed Power mod, which is so good. Again, using skills deals that damage, right? Well, since melee is a skill all the time, and there's other ones that are based on that. There's other skill based triggers in the game, and anything that triggers off a skill triggers off of punching things. I think you could probably put a pretty sweet melee trickster build together as well, but the one problem there is you don't have that buff coming from the skill tree. That buff in the skill tree is so strong with the melee. And you know what? This is the thing, right? I think they did that very intentionally, because if you look at the other three classes, Pyro, Techno, and Trickster, their melee does one type of damage, right? Like the Technomancer. The melee does cryo damage. But the rounds do toxic, right? And your Trickster, I think does he do slow? What is his melee? Do you know? Is it slow?
I think it's slow.
And then he's got the twisted rounds, and I forget which one that does. I've never done a Trickster, so one I haven't played. Pyromancer does ash, right, with his melee, and then fire with the bullets. So they've got, multiple ways to do things, but the Devastators all bleed all the way through. And so I think that really it's about that melee instead. Like that's where the other, kind of the balance is at. It's in the melee damage. And so, I think it's a fun little build.
Nice. Good to see that you got your first build together for Outriders, and you're on your way to build mastering this stuff out. Nice.
So how was your beer?
My beer was good. It's not going to last very long. In fact, it's almost gone. So that's how good it was. It's very, very colchy, very light, refreshing, crisp. And I will agree with them. I'm clucking the Rona, man. Cluck the Rona all together. So it was good stuff. Very refreshing. How about yours?
Yeah, I'm loving it, man. This is good. It's delicious. Really, really good. And my iced tea is good also. So I will say
really
that.
What's important, right?
It is. It's what's important. Yep. So with that, man, that's what I had for tonight. And again, I'm not gonna bore you guys with me turning in a whole bunch of bounties. So yeah, I think we could probably sign off. I think we're gonna go work on leveling up our pyromancers and keep on playing and having some fun.
Absolutely. Enjoying the game. Like I said, getting more stable, so we're enjoying it. And on that note, you know what? It's time to say see ya.